Hey friends, I'm kind of a mess right now. I'm going to try and make this little video here. Problem is, I am not in my best shape. I lost my voice on Friday, and it's slowly coming back, but it's still a bit thin and awkward. And anyway, so here's the deal. I am going to talk about a fairly easy subject. I'm going to talk about Kent Hovind and the bad science he does. And what I've done is I've set up my good microphone and I've got it cranked up a bit so I don't have to yell too much. And I'm going to try and use this setup to see if I can get decent sound and get a decent recording out of this, as long as my voice doesn't give out in the middle of it, which could happen, but we'll see. All right, so what I want to do today is it's a little discussion of strategy and tactics here. That what I've noticed following along with creationists and other delusional anti-science people is that they have a small battery of tactics that they use over and over and over again. They're effective for them if you don't know what they're doing. So what I thought I'd do is show you this one Kent Hovind, just excerpts from a Kent Hovind video. It's one I've used before in another video, so it's not entirely original. But just to give you the context, what this is Kent Hovind doing one of his silly whack and atheist videos. And in this case, what he's jumping on is Pelagia, Simon Dan, and conspiracy cats, who apparently made the mistake of criticizing his good buddy Ray Comfort, the banana man, and pointing out that his argument against evolution was pretty bad. So Kent Hovind seems to have taken personal offense that he seems very upset with those three people. So I'm going to just show you some excerpts from his rant and listen for what he does. Listen for the approach he's taking to argue against these people who say that Ray Comfort wasn't making a very comprehensive, coherent, cogent, interesting argument. So enjoy for just a few minutes. I've sped it up a little bit so we can get through it really quick, and then we'll discuss what he is doing here.
We believe dinosaurs always lived with man. They just called them dragons or some other name in other cultures. And we believe the evolution theory is the dumbest and most dangerous religion in the history of the world. Never been a dumber idea than to teach the kids we all came from a rock, which came from a dot of nothing, exploding, for no reason. We've been looking high and low for one functioning brain cell in people who claim there's no God and we all came from a dot of nothing. So far, we haven't been able to locate it. But when they say, mosquitoes are related to whales, no, they're not, okay. There are 80 million tons of bananas produced every year. You believe all 80 million tons of those bananas fit in a dot smaller than a period on a page. Don't you, Pelagia? 80 million tons of bananas. That's not counting the apples and the peaches and the mountains and the oceans and the planets and the stars. All of it. This is what they teach. 18 to 20 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on this page. You would make fun of Ray Comfort for believing a banana was designed, and you believe all 80 million tons of the bananas fit in a dot smaller than a period on a page. 80 million tons of bananas are grown around the world every year, according to National Pornographic. So they all fit in a dot smaller than a subatomic. Pelagia, listen. Do you ever stop and analyze how stupid your religion is? You make fun of Ray Comfort for thinking a banana was designed. And yet you turn around and believe all the bananas were in a dot smaller than a subatomic particle. Don't you, Pelagia? That is what you believe. I don't think you could fit 80 million tons of bananas in a Volkswagen bus. You believe 13.772 billion years ago and 6 weeks, there was a big bang where a dot of nothing smaller than an atom exploded. And 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth cooled down. It rained on the rocks for millions of years and turned them into soup, and the soup came alive. And that first life form learned how to make all the other life forms and everything. Bananas and whales and mosquitoes and ostriches are all related. Notice how they speed my voice up, make me sound like a car salesman, and raise the pitch a little bit.
Yeah, wasn't that fun? I think it's kind of obvious when you think about it what he's doing here. He's constantly calling these ideas dumb or stupid or ridiculous. But what he's doing is criticizing the interpretations. And he's not actually touching on the evidence. So, I would actually kind of agree with him that just coming into this cold, if I didn't have any prior knowledge, and you told me about the Big Bang Theory, I'd say, that's silly. Are you really saying that everything got squished into a single point? And I would be incredulous a little bit, and I would doubt what you were saying. If you were to say to me that mosquitoes and whales are related, same thing, I would be stunned. I would sit back and say, wait a minute, how can that be? They're such different organisms. And that's what Kent Hovind is doing in his little rant, is he's got this audience of tittering sycophants who are listening in on him, and he's bringing up these ideas like the Big Bang and the relatedness of all life on Earth. And on the surface, it sounds like such crazy stuff. Of course, I'd say that the book of Genesis is equally crazy. But here's the thing that he's not doing. He's not discussing the evidence behind these ideas. That's essential for this tactic to work in the feeble brain of Kent Hovind. So he's not talking about any of the evidence. When scientists are doing the kinds of work that leads to these conclusions, they're doing lots of experiments, lots of observations. They are throwing all these observations and evidence out there into the published literature. And at first, it may seem kind of like this is going nowhere. This is just all over the place. And then the magic moment happens when somebody who is usually going to be called a genius or brilliant, is going to win big prizes, is going to be recognized in the history book. So somebody comes along and they connect the dots. And they see how all these things fit together, and they come up with a plausible explanation that covers all of the data that has been thrown out there. And that's essential. That's how we come to accept ideas like the Big Bang and common descent. It's not that we had an a priori interest in establishing these. There was no previous belief among physicists that, gosh, we got to think of a way to make the universe collapse into a tiny little dot and then expand outward. Nope, there was nothing there at first. What happened is that scientists got together, collected all this data, discussed all the data, and then they realized that all the data is pointing in the same direction. That the data is all saying that the universe is expanding, which implies that there was a time when it was much smaller. And then by working through all the data that's out there, they came up with the Big Bang Theory. Now, at first, as you may know, there was a lot of disagreement with that theory. So the Big Bang name itself was intended to mock the whole idea of an expanding universe. Fred Hoyle came up with this, and he was a proponent of steady state universe theories. And so he was just making fun of the whole idea. And that's the way many people felt at first. But what won them over was not because, the idea of everything coming from a single point singularity is so wonderful and charming. No, it's because that's the way the data pointed. That's the way all the evidence was saying we have to go. Similarly with common descent. This was a big struggle for a long, long time. There was no intuitive idea that mosquitoes and whales were related to one another. It was more complicated than that. What it was is people were categorizing and analyzing and comparing all these different forms on the planet. And they began to see, well, there's some things that certainly show a pattern of similarity. So sure, all mammals should be grouped together. All reptiles should be grouped together. They all share common traits that link them. And then a few people started getting the idea, well, maybe there's something that links mammals and reptiles, for instance. And they started working through those observations, and they came to the conclusion that, yeah, that seems reasonable. And then eventually, of course, in the 20th century, when we started sequencing genomes, we could see, hey, there are deep similarities in the genetics of mosquitoes and whales, and they are properly linked together. But nowhere in this was, an a priori decision that, yeah, we've got a conclusion we have to generate data to get to. What came first was the evidence, and then the interpretation came last. It's kind of the opposite of what Kent Hovind does, where what he's doing is he's starting off with his conclusion that the Bible is true, that there's a literal description of the origin of all species right there in Genesis 1. And then he twists the evidence to try and fit it to that. And of course, he has to ignore lots and lots of evidence. So that does not work. That's not science. What Kent Hovind does is definitely not science. It's a kind of science denialism. And by disparaging the work of real scientists who objectively looked at the evidence to come up with these conclusions, he is definitely being anti-science. The other thing I want to mention is that, as I said, nobody came into this business with the prior conclusion that the Big Bang happened or the common descent happened. In fact, many of the scientists who came to these conclusions that those things happened were religious. So when Kent Hovind tries to make the argument that, oh, well, this was all an atheist conspiracy to undermine your faith and to make you disbelieve in the story of the Bible, that's totally bogus, because the scientists who invented these ideas were typically religious, because most people have been religious throughout history. In fact, these same Christians would also argue that all of science is founded on a Christian worldview. I've heard that so many times, yet they never seem to stop and think, but if that's true, why do they keep coming to conclusions that aren't Christian at all, that are derived from the evidence and the experiments and the observations, not from the Bible? And, this happened over and over again. Charles Darwin himself was an agnostic, not an atheist. Many of the natural historians of the 19th century were religious in one way or the other. I mean, there were exceptions, but the majority were true believers of one degree or not. Well, but also, of course, they were also true believers with a more progressive liberal interpretation of the Bible. But yeah, there was no conspiracy to undermine anyone's faith with any of these ideas. It's just the natural consequences of the evidence. Similarly, the Big Bang Theory was formulated by people who are a mix of unbelievers and believers. This was not intended to undermine anyone's faith. It was simply, here's the best possible interpretation of all the evidence we got, and they came to certain conclusions. So what Hovind is doing is grossly dishonest. He's not discussing any of the evidence. He's just making an emotional appeal to the incredulity of his audience. And he's also misrepresenting the people who actually did the science and came to these conclusions that he dislikes so much. Okay. And I hope I am audible. I'll crank it up a little processing to see if I can make it audible. But yeah, I've got to stop. I'm going to go have some tea and honey for a little bit and just I have to teach tomorrow, so I better not overdo it with the voice. Okay, I will talk to you all later. It's been fun. Painful, but fun. Oh, hey, one last thing before I let you go. While you're looking at my lovely patrons scrolling by here, I want to mention that we also have a fundraiser coming up next weekend, September 25th through 27th. We're going to have a bunch of YouTube videos and Twitch streams and game shows and quizzes and fun things like that, uh, all intended to help us raise money to overcome some of our legal debts, which were incurred by rather nasty harasser who sued us because we kicked him off the blog. Anyway, that's happening next weekend. If you want to find out more, you can go to our September fundraiser page. That's at freethoughtblogs.com/fundraising, and I will include a link down below. Please do stop by and see what we've got going on. This is an entirely free event. However, we would appreciate any free will donations you might give to help us overcome these little debts we've got. And we're talking on the order of tens of thousands of dollars. So all of your help would be greatly appreciated, and we'll try to give you a good time, and we'll do fun things while you're tuning into us. So see you next weekend.